latest development in the story of Israel's scandalous treatment of African asylum seekers was revealed last week. After denying to even examine most of the refugees' asylum claims, deporting and imprisoning those who stayed, Israeli authorities are now coercing them to sign on to so-called voluntary return as part of Israel's arms and trade deal with several African nations. Asaf Itzan is an Israeli lawyer who works with asylum seekers trying to prevent their indefinite imprisonment and deportation.
מדובר היום על כ-50,000, שהרוב המכריע שלהם, למעלה מ-90% הוא מאריתריאה ומסודן, בעיקר מאריתריאה. האנשים האלו, שוב, שיעור ההכרה בהם בעולם הם באזור ה-80% כפליטים. בישראל 0, או קרוב ל-0. אין כניסות חדשות, יש גדר מאוד מרשימה שנבנתה בגבול הדרום, ואף אחד לא נכנס כבר הרבה מאוד זמן. אנחנו אומרים בין 0 לעד 10 כניסות בחודש. בית המשפט העליון רק לפני כמה חודשים ביטל את התיקון הקודם לחוק ההסתננות, והממשלה פשוט באה וחוקקה אחד יותר גרוע.
איזה אפשרויות יש לפליט להיאבק במערכת החוקה בישראל שמטפלת בפליטים?
פשוט מקלט לא נבחנות, והנה נבחנות הן נדחות אחר. אף סודני לא הוכר כפליט. 2 אריתראים מתוך אלפים ועשרות אלפים הוכרו כפליטים. מצב קשה מאוד.
My name is Musa Kiso. I come from Sudan, therefore. We want for Israeli government to cancel the new infiltration law. We want the international government and the UN to stand with us and put pressure on the Israeli government to change its policy. Because since we come here, the Israeli government is changing its policies towards the refugees community here in Israel, and by passing a new amendment in 10th of December, where it is allowing to send thousands of the refugees to detention center.
Even the UN body responsible for refugees, which is proven to be politically impotent, took a stand. Before quitting his position as head of the UNHCR offices in Israel, William Tall finally agreed to speak out, saying, as UN High Commissioner, we have access to the prison and we heard what the state offered them. Agreement to return under an ultimatum of jail can't be considered voluntary by any criterion. It is explicitly not a voluntary return. Tamar Avia is a long-term activist who worked tirelessly with African refugees and was one of the few Israelis to help in the recent protest and strike against the government's policies.
One of the main tools that the government is using also to induce the panic within the community and to make life just impossible to survive is to close down refugee businesses. This is sometimes with and sometimes without any relation to the legality or validity of their visas. The immigration police started making mass arrests on the street. This spread a lot of panic in the street. They were just making arbitrary arrests, didn't matter what kind of paper you had. And there were a lot of rumors going on. The next week, the Ministry of Interior offices where the asylum seekers come to renew their temporary visa. This is usually 30-day visa, sometimes 2 months, sometimes 3 months. These offices started closing, stopped giving service, sometimes open, sometimes not open. But the great success of the government strategy is the massive voluntary return.
According to UNHCR statistics, more than 80% of refugees remain in the region of the countries they flee. While the Israeli right wing portrays the refugees as a serious demographic threat, they make up less than 0.4% of the population under Israel's control. In comparison, the city of London has 5 times the number of asylum seekers of Israel. Why is Israel against resettling these refugees to other countries if it wants to get rid of them?
Well, Israel wants to get rid of refugees, but it doesn't want refugees to get a good solution, because then that would give African refugees an incentive to come to Israel as a stepping stone on the way to a European or Canadian or American country or any other country where their human rights would be respected as refugees.
Because of the security situation in Eritrea and North Sudan, Israel cannot legally deport the refugees there. It's therefore encouraging them to leave on their own, either to Sudan or other African states. Speculations began this summer when, after a long campaign of persuasion, Israeli representatives tried to secure the destination, offering various sub-Saharan states arms, and trade deals. Last week, it was finally revealed that the refugees are being sent to Rwanda and Uganda, and potentially also to Kenya.
Uganda will also allow migrants to use its territory as a transit point to return to their home countries or go elsewhere. In return for the favor, Uganda has been promised to be furnished with an undisclosed sum of money and military equipment.
This effort predates even the previous governments of current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In 2008, then Prime Minister Ehud Olmert offered to pay various African nations $1,000 to $1,500 per refugee. The Israeli financial daily Globes reported in June 2008 that the decision was made to try and sell the refugees to African countries. Following the decision, the Foreign Ministry turned to every African nation with which Israel has diplomatic relations, including Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, the Ivory Coast, and Benin, and offered to pay for taking in the thousands of refugees who came to Israel. While during Olmert's leadership the African states refused, Netanyahu made them a better offer. In 2009, Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman visited several African states, including Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya, with an entourage of arms dealers. While no deal was signed on the trip, his deputy, Dania Elon, continued the visits. Then, in 2012, Netanyahu appointed a special envoy, former Mossad agent Chagai Hadass, who was a key negotiator in the release of captured Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Hadass made a number of undisclosed trips, this time offering $8,000 per refugee and a trade package including agricultural training, technology, and arms. When the Israeli daily Haaretz succeeded in lifting a gag order on the deal in August last year, it was revealed that the country to which the government intends to ship the asylum seekers was indeed Uganda. This week, Haaretz revealed some refugees are also finding themselves in Rwanda.
They're a currency, one of many currencies in Israel's economic interest in arms trade in Africa and also its colonial interests.
ההסכמים לא נחשפו מעולם, זה מבחינת נעשות מדינה. אין לנו מושג מה הזכויות שאנשים מקבלים. יש לנו דיווחים שאנשים הגיעו לאוגנדה ורואנדה ונלקח מהם, הם לא קיבלו שום שהייה, שום ויזה, שום כמובן סטטוס, ולא נבחנה בקשת המקלט שלהם, והם הפכו להיות חסרי מעמד, ודברים חמורים.
S is an Eritrean refugee who made his way to Israel from years in Sudanese refugee camps. Following the coerced effort to get him to leave the country, he decided to sign the agreement and go. For fear of imprisonment, were he to find himself back in Eritrea, he refused to be filmed.
نحن أين خشبين شان نحن بني آدم لكن قبل متى شجعنا لمدينة إسرائيل دانو شان نحن لو شبيهم كلهم نحن لو بني آدمين أشخر لو بني آدم زي ما شان يخل لقيت زانش زي ما شان يخل لقيت אז בגלל זה אני מעדיף ללכת לאוגנדה לפחות עם שחורים.
אבל אתה יודע שהרבה אנשים חותמים לנסוע לאוגנדה, וכשהם יוצאים מהמטוס הם מוצאים את עצמם בסודן.
לא נתנו לנו איזה ברירה. לא נתנו לנו איזה ברירה. נגיד פה קודם כל מהעם, מהממשלה, מהחוק. באמת מדינת ישראל לא כמו שהוא הייתה מדינת ישראל. אומרים כושים, אומרים סרטן. שאני קודם כל אין לי אזרחות ללכת לאיזה מדינה. אין לי אזרחות. באשתי שם, אפילו שהממשלה...
מה יקרה אם אתה תיסע לאריתריאה?
לאריתריאה, שאני ברחתי מהצבא. אני ברחתי מהצבא, זהו. כלא לכל החיים, או ירצחו אותי.
We know that when the flight goes down, their names are called out by the Khartoum police. So they are expected by the Khartoum police. Everything they have on them is confiscated. Okay, they're taken into interrogation, sometimes for a day, sometimes for several days or a week, and from there there are two options: either they are released under limiting conditions, they may not leave Khartoum, so their movement is limited. They have a police file. Sometimes their whole family has a police file. They have to report to the police either daily or once a week. Many of them are put under pressure to become informers for the police because they are in a vulnerable position. All of them, all of the passports are stamped with the cancel, so they can't use their passport anymore. They will not be able to leave Sudan with it. with a passport. These are the ones that are released, and they are the ones that are probably in jail.
Since the interview, the Organization of Sudanese Refugees in Israel recorded 13 deaths of returnees who were tortured when nearly 1,000 remain in jail in Khartoum. According to international standards and law, if refugees decide to voluntarily return to their countries of origin, the host country, in this case Israel, ought to provide them with comprehensive legal and return counseling, information, sufficient time to prepare, reintegration support, assist in their ability to find housing, employment, healthcare and education, monitor their return, and so on. Instead, the returnees report that once they've landed, often not knowing to which country they're even being sent to, they have no contact with any official representatives from Israel or the country to which they were sent after their arrival, and no one assists them or deals with their needs. The government's response was that all actions are taken in accordance with international law. For The Real News, I'm Leah Turochansky in Tel Aviv.